none, I'd like to get started here tonight. So as we begin tonight, I wish to acknowledge that we are meeting on the territories of the Sauk Nation. And so, Council, you have our agenda in front of you. So, looking for a motion to approve with the inclusion of the supplementary information on yellow paper. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Logans. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, opposed, motion's carried. I didn't read those out specifically as the bullets. That's okay? Okay, good. Okay, so we have adoption of meeting minutes. I propose that we move them in a block. Are there any questions or corrections about said minutes? Councillor Bateman.
Yes, I have a few here. On page 43, it's least...
Can you give the date of the meeting, like which...
Okay. Page 43 is...
Do you know which meeting date that would be?
That is the meeting of February 27th.
February the 27th, okay.
And under public comments, we have a comment by Joanne Johansson. And that's Lise Johansson, L-I-S.
Okay, thank you for that correction.
Yeah.
And anything else?
And on page 45, under council discussion.
Same date?
February 27th. We're talking about... Parks and Environmental Services, and I could have sworn I made a mention that we needed to investigate the Strata Council perhaps freeing up 2 of the 6 parking slots at the end of Austin's Place.
Yes, we did have that as a discussion. Councillor Parkinson, microphone.
Through your worship, we asked staff to look into seeing whether they'd be willing to give up their parking stalls.
Yep.
So I'd like to see that minute.
So if we could have that added in, please, to that. Anything else from members of council? So if we could have a mover and a seconder, please.
Move
adoption by Councillor McMath, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Anything further? All those in favor of adoption? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. So that's all the minutes then. So then we'll move right into our delegations for tonight. We have 4 of them. So just like to remind our presenters this evening that we have 5 minutes allocated to each delegation, and there is a timer there, so we'll just ask that you stay within your 5 minutes, please. So first up tonight is Sooke Saltwater Series. Mr. Ron Nietzsche, please.
Oh, there he is. I didn't see him in the back.
And if you could just turn on the microphone, just the button on the base of it. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Ron Nietzsche. I've been involved with the Sooke Saltwater Series for this year would be the 5th year. If you're not familiar with the series, it's a series of 3 fishing derbies, 3 off-season derbies, which are designed to spread fishing, some business across the fishing industry and tourism industry in Sooke. Tried to spread it out throughout the year. The first derby is in May. It's May 11th and 12th. That's the Halibut Derby. The Coho Derby is typically on Thanksgiving. And then there is a winter fishing derby, which is in December on Boxing Day, on December 26th. At those derbies, the funds raised from the derbies are split between the derby winners, the prize winners, the top 10 winners, and of course the first place winner. And we also give funds to the Sooke Food Bank, the Sooke Charters Creek Restoration Society, or that's the Juan de Fuca, Charters Creek. I'm sure you know which one I mean. The Sooke Salmon Enhancement Society, and we've also given monies to SVIAC, which is South Vancouver Island Anglers Coalition, which runs the net pen project at Sooke Harbour Resort and Marina. So I have supplied you with some sponsorship information. I believe that the district has at least the last 4 years, if I'm not mistaken, sponsored the Derby Series in one way or another. We have applied for a grant in the past, but we have, over the last couple of years, asked for a sponsorship. So that's what I'm here to do this evening. And I'd like to ask for a sponsorship in the amount of $3,000.
Sorry, $30,000?
$3,000.
Pardon me. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, are there questions from members of council? Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship to staff, how much money do we have in our sponsorship account?
$2,700
$2,700?
in the draft 2019 budget.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions from members of council? Councillor Logans?
Through you to Ron, Mr. Niche, if possible. First, thank you for coming back, because I remember the first time you were here and the subsequent times, and very glad that this is an event that kept going for many years and hopefully many more. But my question would be, what are, if you recall, how much we've sponsored in the past?
I do know that last year was a $2,500 sponsorship last year, and grants in the past were for larger amounts. I would want to guess, but I know they were larger.
I think our deputy has that answer, Ms. Gray.
Yeah, through your worship. 2017, just according to where it's been coded here, was $1,500 for the Saltwater series. And then and that came out of council sponsorships, and in 2018 it was $2,500 that came out of council contingency.
Okay. Okay. Any follow-up, Councillor Logans?
No, thank you very much.
Councillor Parkinson?
Through your worship. So we have the $2,700 in the account, and that's for the rest of the year? Right. Okay, thanks.
Anything else from anyone? Okay. At one of our budget meetings, we have requested staff to put together a bit of a report for us on some outstanding items that have come forward. So perhaps we can look at having that conversation there as we go through the budget, unless I hear something different. Does that work for everyone? Mm-hmm. Just as we're in the process of adopting our budget for this year, we have just $2,700 remaining for the entire year for everyone. And then there have been some outstanding requests that have come forward. So we're sort of compiling those all into a report that we'll receive at an upcoming council. So perhaps we can do that.
Okay, great.
We can't give you an answer tonight.
Sure.
It's okay, but at least we know what you're asking for.
Awesome.
There. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so on to our next delegation will be Gatewood Project. Mr. Jim Mitchell, please.
Thank you. Excuse me. Jim Mitchell, 6631 Sooke Road. Most of you weren't on council when our project started in 2009. It's at Gatewood and Eustis Road. We're doing townhouses there. It took us a year and a half to get approvals for the first go-round, and we finally had to threaten Sooke with legal action to finally get our permits. We completely missed our marketing on the market on the first go-round, lost a lot of money. In September 17th, we'd do another 6 townhouses, and we got a good builder, and the market had improved. We went to Sooke and saw that the plans were all on their computers and everything. They came back to us and said we have to prove that we own the plans. This is after we've gone through the first 6, identical building. We wanted to do this similar, we wanted to make it real fast, no hang-ups, anything, get building right away while the market was still hot. Tony was very helpful. He gave us the changes to the building code that we made changes to it, got that all done. This is back in October of 17, so we thought we're ready to go. Had a meeting then with Tara and Rob, because in our first go-round we'd said that we would sell every 10th unit for $220,000 for affordable housing. and you can't build anything for $220,000 now. So we wanted to move that affordable housing component over to the condo side of the project, which would be another phase. It was agreeable at the meeting that we'd have a meeting after that with the planning department. They met every Thursday. We filled out the form, submitted it to request a hearing at the meeting. Never had a reply. I followed up several times. Finally was told that Ivy is now involved in the project. I contacted her, explained the situation, and nothing happened. I contacted her again a month later, and she said, we have to get a whole new development permit and go to the lawyer and he'll do the paperwork. Went to the lawyer, and he said, we don't need a new development permit. So they went back and forth, I guess, for a while. We never got anywhere. Then, got my glasses on here. Then we sent our builder in and to see where it was at. And now Tanisha's on the file. She sent an email saying that we don't need a new development permit. Arranged a meeting with Tanisha, and Ivy was there, and she apologizes for giving the wrong information on the development permit before, which was fine. And we discussed how Sooke doesn't want to go through the affordable housing component like we had agreed to initially, and they want cash. And they've suggested $220,000 for 6 doors that we're building at this time. So that's like $36,000 a door. Now, everybody in Sooke that's doing building now is getting $1,000 a door, and they're paying next to nothing or nothing for amenities. In our first go-round, our amenities that we paid, we gave 2 road dedications on Gatewood and on Eustis Road. We spent over $600,000 putting in the 2 roads, and we did the sidewalks, street lighting, traffic studies, we did a rain garden, we did underground servicing. We spent a lot of money. And we spent another $80,000 in engineering that Sooke wanted. So now you know why you can't build affordable housing when you get all these costs. That's not counting building permits or anything else. In January 19, I met with Mayor Tate, and she acknowledged that they're accepting $1,000 a door and suggested that the lawyers send in a proposal. So we did that right away, and the only comeback we got was a notation on what the lawyers sent saying we didn't agree to $1,000 a door. And that's where it sits now. On February 20th, I sent an email to Mayor Tate just to let her know where we're at this point. I didn't get a reply. That's why I was requesting this meeting tonight, just so I can bring it before you as where we stand, because I'm pretty well going to draw the line in the sand again like we had to do the first go-round, and I'll be suing Sooke for over $1 million if we don't get this approved within a week. That's where I stand. Thank you very much.
Okay, so you'll sue us for $1 million if we don't issue your development permit, your
Well, it's
building
been
permit?
dragging on for a year and a half now trying to get this simple little building permit.
Okay, so first off, in order to change, there's a process there's a covenant on your property, as I understand it,
No,
right?
apparently it's not.
There's no covenant, there's no
All the writing says there is, but the lawyer checked it out and there isn't one.
section
We don't mind
219
going along with the
covenant.
affordable housing,
Okay,
but we want to
so-
get something rolling here.
Right, and I appreciate that, Mr. Mitchell. I think first off, everyone in Sooke wants sidewalks and streetlights, so that's sort of a given with development, really, in certain places.
Well, my thing is, why
I'm
are we...
speaking right now.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry, yeah.
Please don't interrupt me.
Okay.
In terms of, like, I was presented with a copy of a Section 219 covenant, which is attached to your particular property. So there is a process, if you want to change your covenant, that you can come to. There's a public hearing, as I understand it, if a covenant's been put on your property by council, then through process, council is the one that has to remove it. You can meet with me, but I can't remove your covenant. I can give you ideas, I can look into things for you, but I do not have the authority to say, oh, ignore the covenant and do this instead. There's a process, there was public input, and through a democratic sitting of council, they agreed to do X, and it was signed off apparently by yourself. So that would be, maybe I can just get staff to explain if Mr. Mitchell wanted to have his covenant changed, what would that process look like?
Through your worship, I believe Ms. Bashada had explained to Mr. Mitchell that there is an application and a fee process to amend a covenant, and it would come to council through a public hearing process. The covenant is on title, and it requires, as he had mentioned, like 10% of the dwelling units. It requires that the owner enter into an affordable housing agreement with the terms noted in the covenant to be included in that agreement. And then it also states in there, and I think this is where the $220,000 is coming from, is that it restricts the initial sale of the unit to a maximum of $220,000, which is what staff was pointing out in the covenant. The owner isn't required to enter into that agreement until after the first 9 dwelling units are constructed. I believe there's a total of 18 for the development permit that was issued. So he needs to amend the covenant, and staff's willing to support that, but has advised that he would have to come to council with an alternative solution, be that land or cash in lieu per the OCP policies.
Okay, so is that a process you're comfortable doing?
Well, I just don't understand why the lawyers and the staff here haven't got this sorted out by now, because we thought way back in October of 17 we could just move the affordable housing component, because I don't want to commit to building this project and then get stuck with a big bill for affordable housing not knowing what the amount is going to be, because there's always been rumors that you want cash instead of giving you buildings, and we can't build it for $220 right now anyway. So, but on it we can build a condo for under $220, and I don't mind going along with the original commitment that we made. But I don't know why.
So I'm confused. So you don't mind going along with the original commitment that was made? Then you would just carry on and meet this.
But I'd requested back in October of 17 to meet with the planning staff to get it formal that we could move the affordable housing component to the third phase, which would be the condos, because we can build smaller units there, we can build rental units there, we can accomplish the affordable housing there. But then I've had the feedback that you don't want to get involved in buying a unit for $220,000 because you can't administer it. So you'd prefer cash in lieu. So now my contention now is, why are we being charged $220,000 or suggesting we pay $220,000 for 6 units when everybody else is paying $1,000 a door?
I didn't hear that suggestion, though. What I heard was that the unit would have to sell to a maximum price of $220,000.
Yeah, but they came back and said they would prefer to have cash and consider $220,000.
I don't know about that. I'm just reading what's on here. Restricts the initial sale price of affordable housing unit to a maximum of $220,000. So that would be an option. That's what's in the covenant that was signed off for this.
Probably have it right here.
Councillor St. Pierre?
Just a few questions. How much are the actual townhouses supposed to be selling for? I know it's not going to be specific.
New ones, they're different sizes, but they would go from about $390 to $440, something like that. Okay. The original go round, they were under. I think the highest one was about $255 or something like that.
All right, and
back in 2009.
Perfect. And the challenge seems to be that the agreement was made at $220, and at this point, with cost of living and increasing the cost of building, you can't actually build a townhouse for $220.
That's right.
All right. Is it possible to amend the covenant to something that would actually be a price point that would work?
Well, my thought was, when we met with Rob and Tara originally, that we could still either build smaller rental units, do a whole floor of the condo side, and smaller units, 700-800 square feet, and you could still sell them for $220, I would think.
Right, so you could still sell those.
The smaller units rather than the townhouses.
Okay, so the condo phase would allow for the selling of the units, which wouldn't actually involve an administration of rental units for the municipality.
That's
right. So that is another option without having to develop a housing authority or something weird.
Yeah. Different options. I just wanted to not get building and then not know what the final end result would be. I wanted to get all this affordable stuff behind me.
Now, my understanding is that we still have to go to a public hearing in order to make any sort of change to the covenant, and I don't think the staff has the authority necessarily to offer a cash in lieu without a public hearing to change the covenant. I can't be sure.
I wasn't aware of that. Okay.
Yeah, that's correct, because it was put on by council, so only council can remove it. So that is the process.
So I'll get the lawyer working on that then.
So that would be the application that you would need to make. It would need to be advertised in 2 weeks. Just like a public hearing, it would have to be 2 separate notifications. So there may be an advertisement fee advertising fee associated with that. And then it's the case of making that proposal, then that could come to council. Ms. Machado, if you can just clarify, I just want to make sure that we're clear on what the process is.
Yes, I think we had this conversation on the telephone. We would ask you to pay the public hearing portion of a rezoning fee, which is $1,200, which will cover our costs of notification, et cetera. And then there's a $200 legal covenant change fee. So the total application fee would be $1,400.
Okay, we'll get going on that.
So when this comes forward, then, will there be any form of recommendation? Like, so we would get a copy of the existing covenant, and then with this, Mr. Mitchell's lawyer would then say, okay, we would like to propose this instead, like, so we know what we would be looking to amend the covenant for?
It would be like any other application. We would ask the applicant to work with our planning staff and try and come to a common ground so that staff can make that recommendation to council.
Okay. So that would be the process then, and then we would receive that and deal with it publicly, receive public input, all that sort of stuff.
I'll get the lawyer on it. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Now, this comment here is one we got from Tanisha.
Ms. Everts, actually.
Sorry?
We're in council, so there is a level of formality that
sorry.
I look for, Mrs. Everts.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Her last name is Miss Everts, is Everts.
Oh, is it? Oh,
Yes.
I didn't know. Okay. So there are alternative options to achieving the affordable housing component to this, such as cash in lieu, perhaps for that $220,000 amount, is what they said.
Okay, so then when we met, I had suggested that your lawyer come back with a proposal and suggest this. This is what is reasonable, and then you could provide that to our staff. They could vet it and give a recommendation to council.
Very much. Thank you.
$220,000 on 6 units seems a little steep to me. So, but I don't know the full context. So perhaps when we receive this report, if we could find the original report that led to the rezoning and the covenant, that would be good background for this council, given that it was 10 years ago. Councillor St. Pierre?
I would suggest that the $220,000 is insufficient to pay for affordable housing, as Mr. Mitchell has pointed out. You can't actually build for $220,000, but if Mr. Mitchell is willing to actually build, condos that are actually, available to people that have an income where they could pay $220,000, that makes a lot more sense, because then we actually get affordable housing. Even $220,000 in our own pockets wouldn't actually allow us to build affordable housing, but we've got a developer here who's actually willing to build affordable housing. So, but then it's the case of knowing that that would actually happen. This is the market, so you're going to sell them for whatever it is that you're going to get, just like everyone else that's building market housing. So it's the case, that's where we just need to know, like, what are we agreeing to and how do we see that happen?
Okay, I'll get the lawyer working on it.
Okay.
Thank you for your attention.
All right. Okay, our next delegation this evening is Westcoast Adventure College, and Mr. Scott Taylor is presenting tonight.
Hi, thank you. Scott Taylor, 5449 Sooke Road. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our proposal this evening. We are requesting our location at 5449 Sooke Road to be Zone C4 Commercial Recreation to be added to the proposed bylaw number 730 to allow for cannabis retail.
It's a PDF, so that's not going to work. It did work, didn't it?
It did, yeah. I've been operating businesses in Sooke for over 19 years. Westcoast Adventure College, Rush Adventures, Stickleback Westcoast Eatery are all located at the 5449 Sooke Road address. My wife and I have been a property owner in Sooke for over 13 years, paying commercial property taxes to the City of Sooke. The Westcoast Adventure College educates, certifies post-secondary educational students interested in careers in adventure tourism. Many of our grads have leading jobs in the industry and own some of the top adventure tourism companies in BC. For example, Kelp Reef, owned by 3 local brothers that came out of our program 3 years ago in Sooke. Our accreditation through PTIB, which is the Private Training Institute branch, and 18 years of experience allow us to branch out into other sectors of education, working with the professionals in the industry to create curriculum, teach, and certify industry standards. Our college has been approached by the cannabis industry professionals to partner with us in our property and with our college to create a cannabis retail store. Our partnership would also include creating educational programs for the cannabis industry by collaborating with their scientists and industry professionals to create curriculum. We believe with our educational experience and our partners' knowledge in the cannabis industry that we are positioned to be a leader in providing cannabis education. Our first curriculum development would create a free high school program explaining the risks of health and safety for the Sooke School District. Tourism benefits. BC has the finest quality cannabis in the world, which we believe will spawn a new area of tourism in the near future. Cannabis tourism may well become one of the fastest growing sectors of tourism over the next coming years. We can use these states to gather some information later to give you for the tourism information about, I guess, the impact that's happening in those regions. Retail cannabis, cannabis tourism, culinary cannabis, and cannabis education are areas of the cannabis industry we feel we can focus on due to our industry knowledge. Economic benefit for Sooke. With cannabis retail license, our property assessment will increase over the years. Cannabis tourism will attract people to Vancouver Island, Sooke in particular, looking for retail products and other opportunities in the near future, exploring our local craft growers, for instance. The impact of having an educational component as part of a city's economic has been proven in Sooke over the last 18 years, and we estimated at around $500,000 annually. Our college has had students from across Canada and the world attending our courses while living in our community. We believe the cannabis education could have a greater economic impact to this region. I now would like to introduce one of our industry partners, Jazz Bazzi, to explain more about our social contribution plan for the Sooke community and to give a little bit of a brief outline of who he might be. Thank you for your time.
Mayor Council, thank you for your time. My name is Jazz Bassi. Sorry, my name is Jazz Bassi. Born and raised in Vancouver, spent about 26 years with the RCMP, and actually I trained your guys' Commander Jeff MacArthur, so if he's a good cop, he's my guy. If he's not a good cop, he's not my guy. So in my career in the RCMP, I spent some time in Port Hardy, on the island here, Terrace and all these cities, but spent the majority of my time undercover drug work, so I'm an expert in cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, provided expert evidence around the world. So within the last 5 years, I've been in the cannabis industry, more of a social responsibility area, where we're trying to involve places like UBC, the downtown east side, to get people off opiate addictions and using cannabis instead of opiates. You know, we're just funded a study for $1.5 million at UBC, where we've been working with the downtown east side, about 3,500 patients. We're hoping that we can delay their use of heroin or methamphetamines. We know at this time we can't get them off it, but at least we can spread the time of use with it. So part of our social responsibility with the retail side is that we are going to, education is a major key for us. Education is very important
Just
for us.
one moment, Mr. Bassi, as your time is up. I'm just looking to Council. Okay, so there's a resolution or a motion by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor McMath to extend the time for a further 5 minutes. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously.
Thank you,
Please
Mayor
continue.
Council. So part of our retail side social responsibility, which is education, which is key to us. We will be hiring an education or addictions counselor within our facility within Sooke. We're licensed, and in Victoria and in Duncan. One of the key factors of cannabis use is people try to use cannabis to get off other drugs. And when you bring users in, or alcoholics, or substance abuse folks, we got to give them the right education. We got to tell them what the proper products are to use, and cover the whole gamut of their use. So with our education specialist or addiction specialist, we can send them to the right addictions groups within the city, or different programs within, like from AA to health services to family doctors, etc. Part of our responsibility will be to share profit share with the town of Sooke. So some of our profits from our facility, our business, will go to addiction counselors, specialists within the community to help with the social responsibility as well. So we're looking for your support to change the zoning for our address on Sooke Road. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions from council? So right now we have, I'm going to just ask staff for clarity on process. So we have provided first and second reading to the zoning for definitions, I guess, for zoning. And so in this case, should council wish to add a fourth location, some of the uses, though, would be up to the province and the federal government determining, like processing and retail at the same place. Like that's up to their, like your application, I believe, to the process. This is just zoning.
Correct.
For us. So because we've already given first and second reading to said bylaw, what is the process now if council wanted to add a fourth location?
Through your worship, if council is supportive, they could, through resolution this evening, direct staff to bring back the bylaw to include the amended or the property. At the next meeting on March 25th, the council would rescind second motion of the bylaw, give second reading as amendment to include that property, and then we would proceed with our public hearing process. So there would be a 2-week delay, and I believe it's April 8th that would come forward.
Okay. Councillor Parkinson?
Through your worship, it's a very interesting proposal of what you would like to do down on that property. I was just wondering for road right-of-way to go onto the highway. Has there been any mention of traffic controls down there through the provincial government? Do you have anything on that?
We have not studied that yet.
Just if I could also ask from staff, though, what they're proposing would meet their current zoning. It's only the definition for the cannabis piece that would need to be added, but the other uses at this point would fit in with the current zoning?
Through your worship. So the current bylaw is introducing two things: a new definition for retail cannabis, and that use being introduced in the C2 zone, where the three existing sites are currently their zone C2.
Yes.
And to allow, there's like a notwithstanding clause that would be added to those zones, saying on those legal parcels, retail cannabis would be allowed, not in all C2 zones. So in this case, if council so chose, we would add also the C4, this property zone C4, that the use be added to C4 with a notwithstanding clause specific to that parcel, if that's what council chose.
Okay, so it would be the C4, but this particular parcel specifically. So not all C4s, just like the other ones are that particular zone, but specific to this.
That's correct.
Okay, and because they already have the adventure call, all of that is just fitting in with the zoning that's currently in place for that property. It's just the specific definition.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Councillor Parkinson, then Bateman.
Through your worship, are you planning on building another building on the property to host this, or is it going to be part of what you already have there?
On existing property.
Right.
With building.
Thank you.
Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I had a chance to look up GrowX Global, and it's quite a significant operation, seemingly. And fascinating proposal. I note that McGill University, cannabis education is the thing at the moment, so that's a wonderful piece. And this is going to be a bit of a super cannabis hub, it would strike me, with the retail store as well. And the tourism angle. My concern here with the process is that back on February 25th, when we approved the three site-specific cannabis retail stores, I think Mr. Diebler and you, your mayor, your worship, noted that you'd heard from 4 or 5 different potential applicants. I guess the question is, when does one draw the line? And, okay, we have 3 we were going to discuss at the public hearing. Now we'll have a 4th, potentially. What about these other applicants?
So I'll share that none of the others are situated in Sooke. This is a current business. Like, I guess I look at this one differently because the Westcoast Adventure College and Mr. Taylor have been in operation in Sooke for 18-some years and are looking to do something different for that particular property. So I'm more flexible in that case as opposed to someone who doesn't even live here and phones me from wherever and is looking to come into Sooke but hasn't actually been here yet, but feels that this would be a good location for many reasons to set up a shop. It's a little bit different than somebody who has actually been operating in our community for a long time.
Good distinction. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Parkinson?
Through your worship, I'd like to make a recommendation that we bring this forward to have a public hearing with the 4 of them included, however
Okay.
we word that.
I'll ask Ms. Mushada just to clarify the language there so we have it correct.
So it goes to public hearing, right? So people have their say.
I think the motion was to direct staff to include this 4th property in the zoning amendment.
Yeah, and we'll insert the bylaw number, and then, so just a reminder, that will come back to repeal second reading and then give
Correct.
second reading as amended at the meeting on the 25th.
Okay,
Correct.
so Councillor Parkinson then is direct staff to bring back the bylaw number. I think we know what that is.
730.
Yeah, 720.
720.
To include the property located at,
To include the property.
5449 Sooke Road.
Is that,
we'll just add to after your Sooke Road, to include retail cannabis use. Yeah.
I need to meet at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can take that out.
not to retire, yeah. Okay. Okay,
Thank you.
retail. So we haven't voted yet.
Jumping the gun.
So the motion is that council directs staff to bring back the bylaw number 730 to include the property of 5449 Sooke Road to include retail cannabis use. That's your motion, Councillor Parkinson, and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Are there any discussion? Councillor Logans and St. Pierre?
I still have some questions for the presenters. Is this a good time, or should I do it after the motion?
No, we're on a motion now, so...
May I after the motion?
Yeah, I'll come back to you, so maybe if you could just stay in your chair, if you don't mind. Councillor St. Pierre?
This is a comment pertaining to the motion.
Sorry, what do you want to do?
This is pertaining to the motion.
Okay.
And it's in line of an explanation. We had previously decided on 3 because there seemed to be reason to think that the retail market for cannabis in Sooke might only support 3. But I don't believe that this particular proposal is actually competition in many different areas with those particular outlets. And just going to put that forward.
The other point is that two are sort of close together. One, and this one is also, from a location perspective, is in a different area of Sooke as well. So in that way, it is spread out. Councillor Logans?
Council is not in the business of aiding business, so we don't play the business games and decide for the community exactly in that sense how much is too much. So I don't think that was exactly the reason why, but Yeah, I'm definitely in agreement with Councillor St. Pierre in regards to the fact that this is a different, bringing something different to the community, so it should be good. I'm in favor of the motion.
Okay, anything else on the motion? Call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. And then Councillor Logans, you had some follow-up questions?
Yes, thank you for your presentation and for thinking outside of the box. I think that's one of the benefits of our community and having you folks here. So I had a couple of questions just to wrap my head around this as we move forward with the motion we just passed. You mentioned a couple of things. One was high school safety program about health and benefits. Can you expand on that? If I may, through you.
Yeah, one of the things that first that we wanted to do is sort of a social contribution to the community, and I've got 4 young children, 19, 17, 12, and 6, and I believe education is the way to sort of steer youth through this new legislation, and education is one of those methods that we can do that. So it would be great for our college to be able to offer a program that would help students understand health and safety, where to go if they have questions, maybe connect them with some doctors, and be able to basically give them some resources that can help them through this new world that's coming our way.
So are you aware that there are doctors in the school?
I am, yeah. We just found out. We're looking to contact those doctors to see if they have some support in this process as well, and see if we can partner with them. I do know of one doctor in particular I've had small conversations with that definitely is proactive around this and sees a good fit for us for sure.
And have you spoken with SG62?
I haven't. Our college works with School District 61 and 62. We do a program called the TAIL program through the adventure tourism side. So we do have some contacts in the school districts, and I believe that they would be welcoming probably something like this and collaborating with them in terms of what the structure might look like as well.
Good, that's great to hear, because there is a big problem with, I guess, the boundaries between when and where this cannabis use is acceptable and at what age and why. And
Absolutely.
When your parents say, yes, you can smoke pot at school, can you really? And
yeah, absolutely.
So that's a bit of a problem. And then in terms of addiction counselors and that sort of thing, there are resources like that in our community. Have you contacted anyone to
At this
partner
point,
with
we haven't.
as well?
I know Jazz has a social structure campaign that he's done with his other 2 resale stores. So it would be something that we'd like to engage with the council and mayor to discuss what that sort of looks like in terms of sharing some of our profits to help with those social structures in the community.
So I guess that would be like, I'm just trying to wrap my mind around your great
absolutely.
ideas, that's all. So it would be like, when you're saying social contributions, it would be financial contributions to organizations that are already doing the work?
Yeah, we see it maybe Jazz could probably speak on this behalf better than myself, but the idea would be that we would be some sort of profit sharing with the city, and that you guys would be in conversations with some of those community outreach programs or addiction counselors and seeing where that funding might be best suited to be able to be spread out throughout the community.
Gotcha. Okay. No, that's great. It's good to see people working together and collaborating, and when there's funding available, giving it to the people who are already doing the work. And then there, just to clarify, the cannabis use instead of opioids use. Perhaps that's a question for Mr. Bassey.
Musical chairs.
Yeah, I just wanted to wrap my head around what the process is there.
Well, what we've been doing down on the downtown east side with UBC and the Faculty of Medicine from UBC is there's about 3,200 patients that they've been tracking since the HIV epidemic. And Dr. Evan Woods and MJ Malloy have created the HIV cocktail, and now we're trying to figure out an opiate replacement using cannabis. So what we've been doing on downtown east side on unofficial really way is giving opiate addicted patients some cannabis, from gummy bears to oils and things like that. And again, is not to take them off the opiates right away, because we know we can't do that yet, but it's to spread the time, because some of these guys are using $1,000 to $2,000 a day worth of heroin. And where are they getting their funds to get that heroin? Is they're getting it from breaking into cars, robberies, stealing. So the economic benefits to Vancouver police and the store owners and everything are there as well. But we're trying to save some lives here as well, because last weekend they had 17 people overdose in a 3-block radius of opiate and fentanyl. Right, so it's a crisis in Vancouver. I got the opportunity in August to go to India and lecture there on opiate addiction. In one state alone, they lost 23,000 people in a 3-month span to opiate addiction, and those are only the people they know of. So cannabis is a new drug to us, but it's been used around the world. If you go to Israel, they've been researching cannabis since 1964, and they've been using it for women's health, for opiate addictions, ADHD, and seizures, etc. So, but because cannabis here has been used as a recreational market product, we have to educate everybody to use it. We talk about the use. If you go to Vancouver now, vaping's out of control. Right, you got kids that are 10, 11, 12-year-olds vaping. It may not be nicotine all the time, but they're putting some chemicals into their lungs. We know that there is an issue with all this stuff. So part of our education with the schools and with Scott is going and talking to the kids one-on-one, in a group setting, talking to the doctors after school, say, hey, here's what we can do to help you guys. And again, it's not always about the money that we'll make at the store. It's about helping the community as well, because I've been on the streets of Vancouver and Port Hardy and Terrace and all these stuff, and I've seen what opiates have done. So it's our way to get back a bit as well.
Okay, and is it you specifically who's doing these talks, or are you bringing in other
professionals?
professionals?
No, myself and Cash, he does them. We bring doctors and we bring industry experts in from all over the place. We bring anybody else we can to do these talks. We train kids to do the talks as well, or students to do the talks as well.
Great. I do know that some people have transitioned. I know people who have transitioned from opioids to cannabis addiction. And then, don't get me wrong, I know that it's much safer to be addicted to cannabis than it is to opioids. But do you have a transition process for those folks as well, or is that where you would be outsourcing that work to other organizations?
That's where we'll be outsourcing to our organization, who are the experts in medicine and that, right?
Yeah. I asked because the addiction recovery facility, I think the closest one's in Nanaimo, and it's like $25,000 a year. I mean, not a year, per term. Yeah.
Well, I know.
So I just don't see how that transition would actually go from taking someone off opioids to being successful.
I think that's one of the biggest problems that we've had in the Lower Mainland after shut down Riverview, is that there is no place to take anybody for medical detox or anything like that. We have short-term beds everywhere, but there is no long-term beds, and that's something that the province and the federal government's going to have to work on.
So in the meantime, you'll transition people to cannabis?
Well, we are going to try, and it's just better than opiates, in my opinion, and opinion of a lot of doctors, than taking Oxycontin and Tylenol 3s and everything else.
Right. It prevents deaths, but doesn't necessarily provide a wonderful life for these folks. But I think that piece would be something, I'm not blaming that on your organization,
no.
But it's definitely a piece that I hope you look into, because that's a huge gap, and I'm not really comfortable with supporting the transition to a business that sells cannabis, right? It's just kind of a conflict of interest.
It is a conflict, yes, but in my books, it's a good conflict, really.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Council.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bassey and Mr. Taylor. So this will then come to us in a report next council meeting, and then it will roll ahead to the public hearing. So I think some of the other pieces, some of your questions and all that will need to be addressed sort of once these things conclude, and then what is the next piece from there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, our next delegation is the Sooke Region Food Chi. We have Ms. Anita Wasiuda and Mr. Gerard LeBlanc, please. And if I could have 5 minutes on the timer, please.
Your Worship, Council members, we are here before Council tonight to request funding assistance for this year's Sooke Food Chi Grow Row program. Tonight, we would like to provide our request, a brief background, details on how the funding will be used, and then answer any of your questions. We have secured half of the funding required for this year's Grow Row program. This includes $1,500 from the food cheese events and some of our revenue, and $400 from the Victoria Foundation, and that was coming through the Sooke Food Bank. We are looking for an additional amount of $2,000. We're hoping that the council will consider $1,200 from the District of Sooke, and the remaining will be approaching the Juan de Fuca electoral area, as that program also benefits the outlying areas of Sooke. We are also waiting for a decision on a request for a donation of seeds, which actually helps from the materials. Over to Gerard.
Thanks, Anita. Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I got quite a revelation when I was doing some background research on median incomes around BC and specifically in Sooke, realizing that about 14% of BC's population live in poverty. That's roughly 680,000 people. That means they have a household median income of less than $41,866, and they have to make ends meet on that. Also, BC has the highest rate of working poor in Canada, and their median income is $15,000 a year. Looking at Sooke, we have one-person households with a median income after tax and these are 20,015 StatScan data, of $29,632. If you do a calculation of the households in Sooke that are below the poverty line of 41,866, you end up with about 1,150 households, with an average household population of 2.3 people per household. That's well over 2,600 people in Sooke who are living in poverty. That's about 20% of your population. The Grow Row program has been operating since 2012. It provides fresh fruit and produce to the food bank, roughly about 1,800 pounds a year. And it builds on the tradition of gardeners being able to provide food to people in their community, share their harvest. I want to point out that our Grow Row program is consistent with the Sooke Agricultural Plan. There's also a specific reference in Section 4 of the OCP to Sooke Region Foodchi and the support of its objectives. It's consistent with the food security objectives of the Capital Regional District and fits in with the CRD agricultural strategy. So we're hoping that Sooke Council will see the value in what we do. And I mentioned in the notes I gave, I believe, to your secretary, it says we're approaching the regional director, or that the Victoria Foundation had provided us with a grant of $500. It was $400. I just got that information before I came here tonight. So, Anita?
Okay. The funding for the part-time coordinator benefits in three areas. The cost of nutritious food, as we all know, is increasing. The Grow Row program will help alleviate a person's dilemma in choosing good food, nutritious food, or other living demands such as rent. Reskilling people is another benefit. While our coordinator provides food production education to our volunteers, they also provide food education to students from Edward Milne, UVic, and Camosun that come and help and volunteer. The coordinator also leads work parties from various schools. For example, today, Edward Milne students came down and helped plant seeds for the Grow Row program. The third benefit is community belonging, which we all recognize. While our request for funding is from May to October to actually pay a coordinator, your funding actually leverages other prospective funding and the continued commitment from our volunteer coordinator and our Grow Row volunteers. These volunteers don't just work from May to October. They're actually working the plots all year round and providing greens from the greenhouse to the food bank now. They're putting seeds in the ground now and preparing the soil. So thank you very much for your consideration of our request and this year's Grow Row program. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation and for that information that you shared so succinctly in 5 minutes and handout as well. I really appreciate that. As I mentioned to the first delegation, we are compiling a report, so an option would be that council receives a report with all the funding requests on it, and then we can receive that and note where the sources are as we go through, because the grant program's closed and we've already sort of set up what our draft budget would look like, so that may be a good avenue for council. Okay, should we just make that direction? Councillor Logans?
Just one note that our grant policy does not provide funding for coordination, so
That's
it would
right.
have to come out of another.
Right.
Yeah, which is one of the things I HATE about it, but yeah.
Yeah, so that's why we're having the policy come back to us at a later date, and that'll be a whole other conversation, but yes, you're right, it would not have fit into that category, so at this point, we could also have the report. Councillor Parkinson?
Your Worship, and I was going to ask, what would the funding actually be used for? Because besides for staff, you have other projects within that it could pertain to?
Yes, basically we're buying supplies, materials for the Grow Row program, such as fertilizers. We're trying to get seeds, but we also have to upgrade some of those seeds, etc. And yeah, so we're kind of fertilizers and such.
Through your worship. So you would have a list of what you would like to purchase, because that would fall under what our grant program is. So for giving funding.
But our grant program is closed for the year, so
But we still don't fund it.
Right, and it's closed. So at this point, though, just to clarify, though, the ask is 2,000 or was it 1,200?
1,200.
1,200, okay. So then we'll look to have this on the report that's coming. Can we put that on for those outstanding amounts? And I have a list that I will also send you. We were all to just send that information to staff on some outstanding things from both the grant and through budget. Okay. Well, anyone can make a motion. Do you need a motion for that? I didn't with the first one. It was more just direction because that report is being.
Sorry, I believe I heard that request has been made of staff previously, so the report's already been directed, and we'll just add these two requests.
Perfect. Okay, that's great. We'll be in touch. Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on, tonight's agenda is item 8, our public question and comment period, please. So this is for all items on tonight's agenda. And if you could please give us your name and address and let us know which item you are here to speak to us about so we can find it.
Gale Hall, 2517 Sooke River Road. And it'll come out from the budget, I guess it's page 9 of 32, and it's the multi-sport court box at Sun River that I wish to speak to. Okay. We're down here at the figure of $1,220,000 that Sooke will put towards that multi-sport court box according to your budget numbers. I have a problem with that because you've got conflicting motions here. On January 14th, the council made a motion with respect to the multi-sport court box that council supports the project and commits the full balance of funds in the playing field reserve account of $408,101 as its share of the project costs. In other words, that was to be our total to go in there. And now we're looking at $1,220,000, which includes the 408. So we're only down to 955,000 now. Much better, don't you think? There's something wrong here. You cannot have a standing motion that's going to come up against your motion tonight for the first and second reading, because they're both connected to the same interest here, and they obviously come up against one another, because we're now looking at $955,000 as opposed to $408,000. I don't think that's acceptable.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Hall. I'm going to, because I know that the difference would be the grant application. So,
But it's not there.
like, the difference isn't the grant application? Because we did support a grant application for that, for the total project. But then, yes, we're only committing
But you don't have it.
this. We don't have the grant yet, so that's a good question as to why would that be in there for the total amount when we haven't received the grant yet, to my knowledge.
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll get to that in that, but thank you for raising that, and then just get clarity on what we can do about that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Other questions and comments tonight? Thank you.
Mayor and Council, it's Justin Wilson, once again, 5119 Sooke Road. I think we're on the agenda is 15.2. I was here in front of you guys previous as the president of Sooke Minor Fastball, which is for the kids. I wear a couple hats because I am trying to improve the field that we play on that's owned by the Sooke Community Association. I've approached them. They've dedicated $15,000 to upgrade the field, and I've approached the CRD, and they've proposed $2,500, which is they have 25% of the population. You have 75%. I'm asking you for $7,500, and that'll give a budget of $25,000. I actually need more than that, but I have some volunteers, and 4M Bobcat is going to donate some of their machinery and time. David McClymb has gone out and found somebody to donate sand to the project. We just hosted the Sooke Craft Beer and Spirits Festival a couple nights ago, and I sent a proposal to you. It said if we go over the $25,000, we'll put up that money as Sooke Minor Fastball. So again, I'm the president of that association. There's a bunch of kids. We're a user group for that field. I'm also an advocate to improve the field that there's other user groups. There's a women's fastball team. So it's tough seeing me and I'm asking you for money at one thing and then another. Maybe it's just because I volunteer too much and I'm wearing multiple hats. So without having prepared a speech, I'm trying to do my best to improve this field, as you guys know. And I've gone out and I've got the funding from everybody else, and it's all contingent on your money, essentially, coming through.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. So Councillor McMath has brought that forward as a notice of motion. So how that process works is that it's provided at writing at one meeting, which was the regular meeting of 2 weeks ago, and then that's where she gave notice, and then tonight we look for a seconder, and then we deliberate on that and go from there. So she has raised it, and it'll be a little later on the agenda because that's just how it flows.
Sure.
And I'm sorry that I missed your event. I would have gone, but I had to visit
You
family.
missed out on a very good one as
I
well.
know, right?
It was a tough ticket to get. It sold out.
I was with you in spirit.
Right.
Put it that way.
Good.
Okay, so there'll be more to come, and then
Okay.
once we have a sense of where that motion goes, because it's not on the floor yet, then someone will be in touch with you.
I'll probably let the kids go home.
Okay, yeah, it could be educational for you to stay with us tonight, but I'll leave you.
I could have brought out quite a few more, but I knew it was going to run late, and I thought, you're lucky enough to see my wonderful face in front of you, so that was probably
Yes,
enough.
well, it was nice to have them in chambers as well,
Yeah,
so thank
okay.
you for that.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. Other speakers this evening?
Ellen Lewis, 5526 Sooke Road. I wanted to speak to what Gail just spoke to as well, with the $890,000 as a grant. And I believe there was at the last meeting, there was discussion as well. If you didn't get the grant, then the project wouldn't happen. So does that same apply to this? And as well, because you've got that in your budget as a first and second reading, can you have a first and second reading on a budget that isn't correct? Because because it's 408,000 that you had approved, not the 2,220,000. Okay, and another question I had too was in regard to the zoning changes with the cannabis. Is there a zoning application? I'm not quite understanding this. As a delegation, you can come and change a zone. Is there any money changing hand? Is there for rezoning for the 3 cannabis stores, or this application as well? It's from a C4 to C2. It takes staff time. It takes a lot of time, a lot of paper. So is there any monies being paid for a rezoning application in any of these applications? Or is just the city doing this?
I don't think so, because we needed to update our zoning bylaw in order for the various applications to come forward. They're not required to have a public hearing, but there has to be some, to meet the provincial criteria, as I understand it, some form of public input has to happen. So it's not, there has to be something, but we also needed to update our zoning bylaw in order for their applications to come through. So in this case, as I understand it, this way it actually catches all of it at the same time, and the province supports this approach, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Still doesn't make sense to me because
we have to still update the fee. What we'll have to do, and one thing that came out in budget was the need to update all of our fees and to bring them into a consolidated bylaw. So at that time, I think there would be that would end up being added on that fee consolidated bylaw when that comes forward at a future time.
Right. So we're rezoning properties. So
we're not rezoning. We're putting forward our side of it so that the retailers can apply, because we otherwise would have no mechanism to receive any of the applications through the provincial referral. But I'll let Ms. Machada clarify this.
Sorry, I have been away for a few weeks, so I'll try and recall what happened before I went away best as I can. But there was a desire on behalf of the municipality to allow retail cannabis. We had those existing stores that were compliant under the C2 zone. They had business licenses, and when the new provincial regulations came into place, our zoning bylaw needed to be updated to allow that specific use in order for them to be able to get a provincial license to sell the cannabis. So council had asked for that information to come forward from staff. It did come forward with looking at the 3 existing locations, and I believe that's what was directed to come forward in a rezoning bylaw, but it's not to rezone, it's just to add that specific use to those 3 properties, now a 4th.
So does the same apply then to the C4 by allowing a C2? It just seems odd. I've never seen this happen where a delegation comes to change the use on a property. So I'm just asking because it's very unusual. I've never seen this kind of an application.
I think in this case, if we had already gone through that whole process and amended it, then they would make an application because it would be after the fact. In this case, because we're in the process of and we haven't advertised, it's just in the process. So in that case, they managed to catch the process along with the others. And in terms of revenue sharing, this is where local government is advocating to the province to receive the revenue share from cannabis. We want 75%, we want 30% of the 75 that the feds have committed to the province so that we can recapture.
It was a process that I was talking about, not the money.
I know. Well, you raised the money piece as well, but in terms of process, we haven't made a final adoption of that bylaw. It's just coming, it will be coming forward. Well, we did first and second, so that's where we're rescinding second and making that change. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lurs. Other questions from members of the public? Okay. So, moving on, our first item here is that we have Councillor Parkinson. Okay. I'll just race it here, is our revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw, and there is a A recommendation that council grant first, second, and third reading to the bylaw cited as revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw number 732, 2019, moved by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Are there any questions on the motion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Next up is the 5-year financial plan. So in this case, because we have not been awarded that grant and it's out for application, just with both the comment that, or the questions that Ms. Lures and Ms. Hall had raised, does that need to be amended in here to reflect what our actual contribution is?
With any grant application, you have to budget for the entire project. Should the grant not be successful, then the project wouldn't happen, and that would change, and that money would go back into that reserve fund.
But so let's say then that, okay, so in order for us to receive the grant, because I know that we've applied for it and we're just waiting to see if we'll be successful, but the requirement is that we budget the whole amount, and then based on receiving the proceeds of the grant. We're counting chickens.
I'm not
before
familiar
they
with
hatch.
the specific application, but I do know that that is typical in most local government grant applications, that the entire project does have to be budgeted for in the local government budget.
Okay, so in the unfortunate event that we don't receive the grant, then this would be amended. There would need to be a process to unwind it, I guess.
It is included in the budget as a grant amount, so
Okay.
no taxation will be collected to recoup that $875,000 or whatever it was. And yes, so it's a wash either way. So we either get the funding and it's accounted for, or we don't, and the project doesn't happen.
Okay, is there somewhere just as we proceed to maybe add like a footnote into that? Or just so that we can see how that moves?
You mean, like, because there's other grants in here as well, like, as far as just the capital page, we get multiple grants a year, and so they're just in here to say if this is how it's being funded is through grants. And so if we don't get the grants, then they don't get funded. I think there's just, if you expanded the cell a little bit, it says other and grants, so maybe it'll be more clear on the final version. But the idea is that these projects are not going ahead if we don't get this grant money, that we're not going to, so a financial plan amendment wouldn't be required because we're not going to now tax people to make up for the difference of the grant money we didn't receive. At least it's, especially for the multi-sport court box project, because that's a significant input. And the balance, I'm not sure if the question was about partially about the 330 versus the 408,000. So the difference there is I took this over in transition for the current director, who's just away right now. So I don't know all the history on it. But the estimated cost of $1.2 million was an estimate. So the additional $78,000 between the 330 and the balance in the reserve fund is basically an additional contingency, because once we didn't have final figures on some of these numbers. So if this grant comes through and we get the final figures, we will have this extra money available should the cost come in more than $1.2 million. So the federal grant and provincial grants were up to 73.33%, which is where the breakdown of those numbers come from. 73.3% is the 890, 330 is the balance we would have to contribute, and then the 78,000 is remaining in the reserve fund. You'll see in the reserve funds, just as final costs get determined, then we can adjust as required.
Okay, so in the financial plan itself, then, when you look at, or when we look at funding sources, and it's noting like government transfers and grants, then that's where that would be the flow through. Like, that is the source that would go to
correct
different capital ones. So it's not a property tax requisition, but the tie-in would be from that as a funding source over to that particular project.
Correct.
I see. Okay. Okay, questions from members of council? Right now we are on, staff is looking for first and second reading. Other questions? Councillor St. Pierre?
This should be quick through your worship. It's just a quick clarification. So the difference between the over 400 and the 330 was that the amount for the construction is an estimate and that there were slightly different contingencies. Is this correct?
Correct. It's just additional contingency. Like I wasn't part of creating all of these numbers, so it's just an additional contingency because we didn't have quotes back from suppliers at the time because the original quotes we had were from many years ago, so we had to get revised amounts, and so we didn't have them. So estimates have been put in, and this is just another
placeholder.
A placeholder in case the costs come in even higher.
And through your worship, this means that the budget is essentially correct as it stands? And even if we were to ask you to look at it again, we would still have the same information. Is that correct?
I believe this should be the same information. I don't have any updated costs on these figures at this point, and we haven't heard back about the grant yet, so there's no new information to provide on this.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Logans?
So just in terms of process we have tonight, we would move first and second, and then we have the open house where we would collect additional information. And is that report coming back to us at the public input session? How are we getting the feedback from that open house?
Your Worship, the public input session has been scheduled on the 20th. We'll bring the bylaw back and we'll provide a summation of the feedback that we got to council so that council can consider those numbers or those suggestions prior to third reading. Of course, having given it first two readings, we would, if council wished, rescind second and incorporate the changes and then move ahead with third. Don't need to return. Okay.
So we wouldn't. Yeah, because that was going to be my next question, actually, through you to staff, was would the process be if we were to make any changes to rescind second and move forward with
I'll
third
turn that over
at
to
a
Ms.
later
Machado so you can
date,
get the
or-
right information.
Thank you.
Rescinding second would not be required. You can rescind the bylaw right up until third. So we have the open house scheduled, and then we will have public input on the financial plan bylaw on the 25th, and then third reading would be scheduled that same evening after the public input. So if there are any changes that come forward from the open house in the report or any public information during the input session, council could then still choose to give third reading as amended to incorporate those changes.
So thank you. That clears it up. And so would we see the changes that evening, though, like in terms of any tax implications, or would we be then moving third reading and then waiting to receive that final report before adopting?
I think it's possible that the Deputy Director of Finance could potentially have a laptop with her spreadsheet, and if there's any changes, you would certainly direct them, and we would give the bylaw. We do those in writing, but she might be able to plug those numbers in and tell you what impact that's having right then and there. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, that's correct. It would just depend on how complicated the changes are. If it's fairly straightforward, the spreadsheet has lots of linkages in it, so update a number here, it'll carry the numbers forward so we can come up with the revised amounts if required. So it just depends how extensive you want to change it, how long it might take.
But if I may, if there are changes, then it would be the case potentially just to schedule some special meetings to factor in those changes as needed, right? If they're not
shouldn't need to. The taxation bylaw, the tax rate bylaw doesn't come forward until after that point anyway, and we still have final reading scheduled. So that would certainly give staff an opportunity to, if we are unable to give you that specific number that night, you can still give it third. That information can come forward. If you're not happy, we could then still rescind third and make additional changes if necessary. We've got time before the bylaw has to be adopted.
Okay, is that good, Councillor Logans? Okay. Okay, so Councillor St. Pierre? Well, at this point, we would be to that council grant first and second reading to the bylaws as the 5-year financial plan bylaw number 731-2019. So Councillor St. Pierre is moving that, seconded by Councillor Logans. On the motion, any other questions about what you've received? Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, I had a, I don't know if this is the appropriate time to mention this, but two things. The council contingency, now we've reduced it. Last year we had $97,500 budgeted. This year we're down to $79,500. And I guess we didn't use up the budget last year. Ipso facto, we're faced with much less. So that when someone like the Sooke Fastball Association arrives seeking $7,500, I guess my question is there an opportunity to get a little more back in that contingency fund?
I think if there was a way, then that would have happened.
It would have happened by
already.
this point.
I think staff had looked at that and then needed to start whittling it down and finding ways to do that. And I'm making an assumption here, but just given that everyone gave input into their departments and what it pushed, it was the case of lowering it down and then looking at where did those accounts total up in recent years.
Yeah. So again, getting down to the brass tacks here is that this tax increase, we're really looking at real essentials here in the district for the functioning and operation of the District of Sooke's municipal operations.
Well, I look at it as we need to maintain our core services and continue on with infrastructure enhancements as we can, repairing roads, the sidewalks. You know, there's a lot of calls for service every day, a lot of community expectations. We're continuing to grow. We want to start cross-training some of our staff and make sure everyone is properly resourced in their applicable departments. We've had some major slowdowns because we haven't had enough people in various departments doing the work, and that puts the entire municipal operations come to a screaming halt when we don't have enough people here to meet the expectations and the needs of our community. So I would say that it's looking at our core services, but also taking in some of our future plan. I'll let planning, Mr. Schaefer.
And Your Worship, as I noted at the beginning of the process, we pared it down for maintenance of status quo services and to build a foundation for improvements in the next few years. So we wanted to make sure that you had a budget with 0% body fat and yet give us an opportunity to continue to provide the services that you need and an opportunity to build on those building blocks in the future to improve services as required.
Okay, anything else from members of council? Okay, I'll call a question then. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, reports requiring action. 10.1, 2019 Communities in Bloom. And this here is the registration form. And I think these can be moved together, that council directs staff to register for the 2019 BC Communities in Bloom program, and that the registration fee of $925 be paid from the Community in Bloom's budget. Moved by Councillor Logans and seconded by Councillor McMath. Any questions on the motion? I think it's an excellent program, and I look forward to having that. If you haven't read the report yet, I recommend that you do so. There's a lot of wonderful material in there about the town, and it's a good way just to check in on our progress as well. So, seeing nothing further, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. EV charger grant application. So, I'm on the wrong application here. So we do have a report here and a recommendation that council authorize staff to submit an application for grant funding application for EV charger installation 2019 through ICIP Green Infrastructure Climate Change Mitigation Substream Clean BC Communities Fund, and that council supports the project and commits to its share $75,000 for the project. Move the recommendations together by Councillor Logans and seconded by Councillor McMath. Anything, Councillor St. Pierre?
Just a quick question.
Yes.
Your Worship. Just wondering where the money comes from Well, like which department, or how does that get paid?
I'll send that over to our staff, please.
Because our contingency is wiped out at that point.
There's,
In the budget, financial, and tax.
yeah, Ms. Gray? So it was budgeted as a capital project, I saw.
Yes, through your worship, it's a capital project coming out of the gas tax reserve fund. We get gas tax money every year from the province, so it just goes into reserve, and then we can use it for various capital projects.
But in this case, if we're successful in the grant, then that frees the gas tax up for other items, or we need, it's both. We'd be looking at 100 and, like.
So, Your Worship, if the 73, or if the grant comes through, we can then, the intention is to roll the remaining funds through into installing more EV chargers in other places.
Okay. Okay. Good. Okay. Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, I see that the current $75,000 is going to finance 6 more level 2 charging stations, and this grant, if we get it through Clean BC Communities Fund, will give us an extra $200,000. So I was curious if there are any ideas on what might be, how this funding would be utilized. I know that there are level 3 fast chargers which do the job in 30 minutes. And I think when Mr. Butterfield talked about these last year, they were coming in at about $75,000. So yeah, I'm just really curious and interested and excited to hear what Mr. Butterfield and the team have in mind going ahead. I guess we'll hear in due course.
Part of it was a recommendation that was brought forward, but council at the time switched to a level 2 charger. So I think that's what has been ordered.
Yeah, no, I got that. And then we have this extra $200,000, which could pay for a few.
I see Mr. Howitt is in the answering seat.
Thank you, Your Worship. Unfortunately, Mr. Butterfield was unable to attend tonight, but I believe that if we're successful in the grant and we get the extra money or the surplus from the grant, we're going to be coming back to council with a report and seeking direction of what type of chargers, whether it's the high-power charger and the particular locations. I believe there was a report last year to council identifying 3 or 4 locations, but nothing was chosen. But we'll come back with a report for you people for a decision.
We did pick some locations, though, like here in Eustis and McGregor Park.
Yeah, there was, Your Worship, there was a few locations spoken about, but nothing was determined for sure. And
okay.
I think it's incumbent on staff to come back and just ensure that the locations that we prefer as staff are the locations that you as council want.
Okay. Okay. Some more on that to come. Okay, so has this been moved? Yeah. Okay, and it's been seconded. So, okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. So next, you may recall that there was a request from the Sooke Economic Development Group for a liaison appointment, and I had put my name forward to be that liaison, but the timing is just not working with the group, and now I don't even know when they're meeting, and they're upset that I'm not there, but it's just not working. Councillor Bateman is offered to be the liaison with this particular group, so that's why it's here.
Second.
Okay, Councillor, I'm going to recognize the speaking order. Councillor McMath had her hand up first. Sorry, I almost said fun.
Prior to my role in council, I was a member of the Economic Development Group, and so I would like to be the liaison of that group, although perhaps there's an option for us to both be.
Okay, Councillor Logans.
I think that's fantastic. I think it's one of your strengths and benefits. And one of the things I would like to see is multiple councillors involved in it. I think that you have the desire, Councillor McMath has the desire to continue in working with that group, and I think it would be great to have another councillor, for example, Councillor Bateman, if you're still interested, so that there is a bit more liaison with the group instead of just one person. Yeah. Absolutely. If you're okay with that. Either way, I'd be happy.
Councillor Bateman?
Well, I'd be okay with that, Councillor McMath, and provided they're okay with two of us coming in. And I believe former Councillor Berger is also part of the group as well, carrying on in her role, so they would have the wisdom of three, potentially, of us moving forward. But I guess we would need to ask the EDGE group how many of us they would like. And I would happily defer to you if it's indeed only one. So.
Well, it's a case like it's council making an overture here, so I think it's they asked for a liaison, and we can provide that in the way that council chooses to respond. That's my approach on this one. Okay. So if council would like to, if it's the will of council to send one person or two people, that is our particular. You may not. As we go through strategic planning and set up other committees, you may find that you may not be able to attend every group that they have, in which case there will be somebody, because there's going to be other things filling your time. And right now we haven't gotten to that place yet of committee structure and the like, but over time you may find that there would be conflicts with your time and the like. So I would suggest sending the both of you as you are available, and then we can reassess it. It's a one-year appointment, so come December we would be reevaluating and making changes as needed. So at least they have two people for now at your availability. Councillor St. Pierre. Sorry, can I just defer to staff because she's trying to tell me something?
The motion is written as for a 4-year term.
Okay, well, I would like it just to be 1 year at a time. Our CRD appointments are for the term, but in terms of liaison, my preference is for that to be just 1 year, so we can reassess that relationship 1 year after another. Every other appointment is for 1 year. Councillor St. Pierre.
I was just going to suggest that we can also use alternates. If Councillor McMath isn't available, then Councillor Bateman is available. And that's a really nice way of managing our time and making sure that we actually have our liaisons in place.
Yeah, well, you could work it out. It's an informal relationship. You're not voting. It's not like the district, right? So I would just leave it to you to coordinate. So I would like to propose that the language of the motion be that Councillor appoint both Councillor Jeff Bateman and Councillor Megan McMath as liaisons for the Sooke Economic Working Group for a 1 year term expiring December 31st, 2019. Moved by Councillor Logans and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Actually, maybe we should just say for the balance of this year instead of a 1 year term, because then it looks like it will go into 1 year for the balance. Is that okay? Yeah, for the balance of 2019. Period. Good. Is that okay for the mover and the seconder? I think that captures the intent. Okay. All right. All those in favor then? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Thank you.
That's a friendly amendment to that.
We just voted on it.
Well, that's the first.
Yeah. Oh, right. Sorry. Yes, it should have been Councillor Bateman and McMath. You could roll with that. Okay, 11.1, derelict vessels in the Sooke Basin and Harbour. We have a report here. Is there any staff comment on this? There is a recommendation that council authorize staff to submit. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong motion, pardon me. Oh, it's just to receive it for information. Anything, questions of staff of the report? Councillor St. Pierre?
Through your worship, just a quick question. I was looking through it. Do we have any indications of a timeline or any guesstimates? Because that doesn't seem to be indicated on when they might actually start removing derelicts.
No, I don't have any information on timelines.
Okay. It was a curiosity. Thank you.
We'll get that information from the CRD directly. It could be that they're also going through their budgeting process as well, so it may be the case of once it sort of clears, but they'll usually send out releases for that. You can ask at your climate action steering committee. Okay, so a motion to receive for information. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Logans. Anything further? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. At the last meeting, I had indicated that I would like the reconsideration of the development variance permit for 7214 Austin's Place. I understand that Councillor Bateman, when he was acting mayor, had met with and gotten more clarity on this from the individuals that are impacted and the applicant itself. So, Councillor Parkinson.
Through you, Your Worship. So I went over and met with the people there as well, and what they plan on doing seems perfectly fine by me, and the property owners beside them are partners, so there's no complaints from the people that are affecting it. And then the women who spoke at the last meeting, the view that they have from one of their windows goes directly above the tree line to the mountains, and that's the view that they didn't want to lose. And their view out their side window where their couch and living room is goes right out to the ocean. It's like dynamite view. So I personally don't see a problem with having the variance there.
Councillor
Yeah,
Bateman?
I would confirm what you're saying. I did pop into Ms. Lister and Ms. Powell's home at 7212, and indeed that 3-meter setback does not impact their view line. So they're going to lose their view regardless. And sadly, this is also the case for Mr. Gouge at 7243 Bethany, because that garage is going up and it's all within the effective height restrictions, et cetera. And yeah, so it's a little frustrating to me that the owner is unable to join us again tonight. And yet, beyond that, yeah, I think we need to, yes.
He stayed to the very end of the last meeting, which went on forever, and then didn't have a chance to speak, so that was good that he was there.
Yeah, he wouldn't have been able to because it was just being introduced, but I think he's away traveling, and it's just those commitments there. Okay, so Councillor Bateman?
And I'm also concerned Mr. Gouge is not here tonight, I don't believe. When he filed his letter back on January, what was that, 21st?
23rd.
23rd, he too had noted he would have liked to have been here, but was going to be out of town.
Okay.
Anyway.
So at this point here, I'm just going back here to that. Okay. The recommendation then, so just a question to our corporate officer on procedure. So this is here for so at this point for reconsideration, then it's the case where it potentially just could go back to council, then that providing that motion based on the original recommendation, or are you needing something rescinded first, or?
No, I was just looking at the original motion that came forward to council, and I think the only thing I would suggest is that adding the words upon reconsideration at the front of the motion.
Okay, so then
that council, or upon reconsideration, that council authorize the issuance of development permit PLN 01416 to reduce the side lot line setback in the rural residential RU4 zone, section 104.7 in bylaw number 600 Sooke zoning bylaw 2013 from 3 meters to 1.5 meters for an accessory building at 7214 Austin's Place.
Okay, so then that would be the motion then for council to consider today. Okay, got it. Okay, so that's been moved by Councillor Parkinson. Is there a seconder for this? Seconded by Councillor Bateman. So on the motion, Councillor McMath.
So Councillor Bateman, you visited the property in question.
Yes.
And so regardless of the variance, the view is going to be blocked.
It is.
Okay, thank you.
It already is, yeah.
And so even without the variance, the view would be blocked?
Correct.
Right. So, and that's where there would be no, yeah. Okay. So anything further on the motion? Councillor St. Pierre?
And if I understand correctly, and this is maybe for staff, through your worship, the reason for the variance is because otherwise there's difficulties in parking and actually making use of the structure for the person's business. Is that correct? So basically a suboptimal type of situation, but no impact on the view that we can see.
Through your worship to Councillor St. Pierre, that's correct. In order for the vehicle to properly turn into the garage, this was the most optimal location for so it required the variance for the turning radius.
Councillor Bateman?
Yes, and the owner did make it clear that this was a secondary garage for his truck, but it's not going to be a business use.
No.
No.
Okay. Anything further? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously then. Okay. Okay, thank you, Council. There's been a request for a health break, so we're just going to take a short 3-minute recess, please. Okay, so we'll pick up where we left off, please. So item 13 is our correspondence file. So first off, what we've been doing is receiving the items to receive, and then we can discuss them afterwards to see if there's any necessary follow-up. So looking for a motion that the correspondence received for February 13th to March 6th be received and filed accordingly for the record. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Bateman. Okay, any discussion on receiving? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Discussion items. Councillor St. Pierre, then Parkinson. Aye. Microphone.
Items I, M, and P.
Okay, because I can't go back and forth, I'm just going to scroll through them. I don't know what faster way I can do that because it doesn't allow us to, like it's all on it's a big PDF.
Yeah, same problem.
So, can we do that?
Yep.
And I'll just read out the date and the header if there is one. Okay?
Yep.
So February 13th, BC budget speculation tax. That's being worked out by the province. So there's the next one I think is Greater Victoria flower count. I counted 4 in my yard. February 14th, invite from Porting Education and Action Team. That's in Nanaimo, I believe. February 16th, Wounded Warrior Run BC. Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship, I would like to see the district, the mayor send a letter of support.
Okay, so that the district, so that the mayor send a letter of support. Okay, that's moved by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor McMath. So we'll go on that. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. City of Dawson from February 1st, Climate Accountability Campaign. February 21st.
Yeah, just on that one, that's Dawson, the city of Dawson Creek has written us stating that that they're not in favor of this climate accountability campaign and pointing out the many upsides and benefits of the fossil fuel industry to its particular community. And I do know that at the UBCM, as you would know, Mayor Tate, back in September, there was a resolution which sought to bring, as a UBCM as a whole, to send a climate accountability letter to 20 of the world's largest fossil fuel companies. Now, we in Sooke did that. Is that correct? Okay. And so I guess there are different views and opinions on the subject across the province. What I did want to find out is where do things stand with that letter that we sent out? Have we heard back, or?
I received a letter back.
A single letter from a?
Yes.
From SO or?
I will look for it. I believe it was from an Australian company, BP, I think. I'll look for that. Yes. And then in terms of this, I don't know offhand if that resolution at UBCM passed. Did you see that?
No,
it did?
I think it 47.9% voted in favor, so it failed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's more of a statement, isn't it? It's not like anyone's expecting large checks to roll in.
No.
But yeah,
well,
thank you.
Well, maybe.
You
That
never
would be
know.
nice. Okay. We have lots of funding requests. Okay, February 21st, 2019, we have a letter here from the Sooke Family Resource Center, so that's nice. There's a thank you card on February 22nd, from IACDI, and also then a letter from JDF Regional Park Watch. There's one on March 6th on the groundwater. That was a follow-up to a letter, Councillor St. Pierre.
So that was item I. I did actually follow up with that. Is this the right time to report back on that?
Sure, since it's right in front of us.
Okay, makes sense. That's what I thought. Okay, so I contacted Ted Robbins from the CRD and was informed that the CRD only regulates water in its distribution system, which does not include groundwater, for example, wells. The CRD does permit bottling, but has control over the distribution system and can ensure accountability. And that's not possible when license holders from the province actually bottle water from groundwater or from wells. Unrestricted access to groundwater can, in fact, affect aquifers and other wells, and this is one of the concerns that Mr. Bruce Gibbons is bringing forward, especially given that we've had hotter and hotter summers and drought conditions and so on and so forth. It says here that there is a bylaw revision process happening that will prohibit water bottling in the CVRD. There is a recommendation on Mr. Gibbons' part, who's been fighting the good fight in the Comox area, that Sooke actually consider having a bylaw preventing bottling within the municipality, which would protect us in some degrees. There's also a recommendation that we bring this forward at the AVICC in order to lobby the government to stop them from actually issuing these licenses in the first place. So that I'm not going to read everything here or the many, many pages that he brought forward, but that's more or less boiled down what I've got.
Okay, so that's something that maybe the deadline to submit to AVICC has already come and gone. So an option there would be, once we receive there, is to see what comes. If anyone else has come in, what sort of information you glean from there, and then as a follow-up, talk to some people from this particular area, get some more information. You'll meet other local elected and have that opportunity, then perhaps bring something forward in coming months after.
Well, the resolution has already been put forward.
You know that there's one forward?
Yes.
Okay.
But they're asking for support from all the municipalities to push it through.
Right, but when you're there, you would vote on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's nothing you can do at this point. You'd have to be there to actually vote and then see, like in the others, where it passes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the next question would be whether or not we want to address having a bylaw in Sooke to protect our groundwater from bottling.
I would get information from AVICC and then bring that back at a future date.
Okay.
I mean, you can or you can put forward a notice of motion to that effect, but I just think if it is going to the AVICC, hear what that debate is, talk to some people there, get some information, and bring it forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Fully informed. Alrighty.
That work? Okay. Okay. Okay, so that's all, I think, connected. I don't want to miss anything. Building green. Do you have build green and building code next?
I just have a question.
Councillor McMath?
Staff is, through your worship, staff is bringing forward a report about the step code. Are they also bringing in that report comparisons like this company in that report?
Not sure. That's still being worked on, so...
We'll have to bring that back,
yeah. That's still in the works, so that's that one.
And I'll just throw in, if you don't mind, Your Worship, Ms. Machado has something to say.
Yes, Ms. Machado?
Sorry, to Councillor McMath's question, I've just been advised that that is in the parking lot waiting for direction from the strategic planning session, whether the council wants to proceed with the step code.
Right, but also it was the case on whether or not a committee that would receive it and do it, and we were looking to get whether it be come to committee or to a future committee of the whole, and what does that look like? Okay, so it's in the parking lot.
Yeah, that's effective. Yeah, I was going to suggest that at the committee of the whole meeting we invite the Built Green.
Yeah. Continue, Councillor Bateman.
Yes, so we invite a representative from Built Green to attend that meeting.
Yeah, and we'll get that once we determine if there's going to be what that committee structure looks like. Councillor Parkinson?
Through your worship, I made the motion that we have a staff report on the step code so that council is informed of what it is, because we received letters and information and we all didn't understand what was going on.
Okay,
so that was the case.
Okay, so we'll get that as a starter then. That's okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so that's all part of that. We have one from I get these really interesting pop-ups here. Why is that happening? The BC Boating Association, Shenyang 2019 World Tour. Most of it's written in another language. Second. Oh, this is interesting. So March 5th, there's the Municipal Survivor Climate Challenge. So the District of Highlands is challenging all AVICCs on a climate challenge. Councillor St. Pierre?
This is actually a really fun one.
Okay.
Basically, the various councils at district councils are challenging other district councils to basically rate themselves in terms of what their footprint on the planet is and so on and so forth. And the idea is to have a number of winners and losers. The first one would be, where do you stand right now and how bad are you? What are the most massive improvements within a period of a year and so on and so forth. And also to use this as a means of raising awareness in the community and basically putting forward some good recommendations. This comes in light of a report that came out in November of 2018, the IPCC, a lot of people I think saw it, 12 years to reduce carbon by around 45% in order to actually keep global average temperatures under a 1.5 degree Celsius rise. So at this point, scientists worldwide are no longer talking about whether it's happening, they're actually talking about how do we slow it down so that we don't actually have a major crisis. This is a good way of actually just addressing it right off the bat and raising awareness, which I think we really should be considering. So I would like to put forward a motion that this council do this.
Okay, so there's a motion that the District of Sooke Council participates in the Municipal Cyber Climate Challenge by Councillor St. Pierre. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Bateman. So there's a link here, and I would just recommend before the next meeting, if you have a time, to go on and do this, because then it takes the average of all of us. And then that'll be our starting point. Okay? So, sounds good. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
And a key distinction when doing that quiz, to do it as a point in time. So if you're planning flights to Quebec City, for example, further down the road, I think we'll be tested on an ongoing basis.
But I think we need a particular date to start, though.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's just do this by, if you can, piece of homework is do this before our next regular meeting and get your result. And then we'll take the average and we know where we start. So we can't wait. They need to know by April 26th. And then I guess the follow-up is that we'll just send an email back to the Mayor of Highlands and let him know that we're challenged. We're taking on the challenge. Okay, so I called the question on that, right? Okay, good. Okay, next is from the President of the Advancement of Young Scientists. There's an invite here. If you're interested, please attend. And we have some postcards that we've been Photoshop into. Okay, support letter for Invictus. Is that
I think we need to address those postcards.
There's no return address.
There is no return address. This is mayoralty candidate Mick Rhodes at the Seedy Saturday was circulating these.
Oh, I see.
And I think I was curious to know whether I noted a sale sign is now up on the piece of land, the Mariners Village.
Well, it could be a condo unit within the building that's for sale.
No,
as well.
Well, it could be. Yeah, I was just curious to know where things stand with negotiations with the Mr. Martinick of Vancouver and how that is.
As far as I know, they're working on their development permit, and we'll see it should they decide to proceed with the site.
And do we have any say in terms of these negotiations with the landowner in terms of
that
he'll
comes
be bringing
from
forward?
That it's form and character, right? So in terms of zoning and parkland dedication, that's all been done through the zoning process. At this point, they'll come forward. This is what they want to do. Staff will look at policies, and then we'll take that and put it forward into a development permit and bring it forward to us. What do you think, Council?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, support letter requested for Invictus Victoria. So Councillor Parkinson is moving that we send a support letter, seconded by Councillor McMath. And we'll send that out. Speaking to it, Councillor Parkinson.
Speaking to this, in regards to the number of items we have for people asking for funding, I would like to add 2 items to that list, and I would like to add the Wounded Warriors and the Invictus Games.
Okay, so Wounded Warriors in what amount, please?
What were they asking? Darn.
Okay, well, you can let staff know, and then with the Invictus game,
They
is
haven't
there?
set a limit. They
So-
want the letter first.
Okay.
And then depending on whether we get the games here, then they were asking municipalities for support.
Okay, so we'll start with a support letter,
Correct.
and then I'll just add that I think Victoria had committed $20,000.
That's correct.
So we can, I would just send to staff what you had wanted to propose, and that would look to come in that report.
Thanks.
Councillor McMath?
So I called and spoke with Mr. Wells, and they're looking for the bulk of their funding from the core municipalities. They aren't expecting, they have no expectation of funding from Sooke.
Okay.
They really just want the letter of support.
Okay.
Through your worship, I would like Sooke to show their support for it, regardless of the amount.
Okay, so that, yep, that'll come. Okay, that takes us, Councillor Bateman.
A little distinction there. What they're seeking at the moment was $70,000 towards their bid. And the corollary to that is if they do succeed, they will be seeking $700,000 from the core municipalities. So
Yeah.
we're not necessarily on the hook for the, part two. I was just looking at Sooke, 3% of the CRD. That would make us $2,500 towards the bid, and then it would be $21,000 towards the games if we were indeed to go on a CRD
I think that's
prorated basis.
That's a little steep.
It is, yeah.
When we have sporting needs in our own community, really.
Exactly.
Okay, but we'll start with the letter, and we can discuss the rest later. Okay, that takes us to the end of that. Thank you. Council and CAO verbal reports. I'm going to start with our CAO.
Nothing this evening, Your Worship.
Pardon me?
Nothing this evening, Your Worship.
No. Well,
Or where should I start, I guess, maybe, but actually.
there's many opportunities there. Okay, thank you. Anything from members of council? Councillor Logans?
Yes, a few things. First, I guess it's been a while since I, or maybe any of us, has done a report. But February 26th, and I'll let other councillors speak to this as well, the Sooke Nation invited us to dinner, and we had a great community dinner with them. They performed the Journey song partially around us as well, and did a blanket wrap with us, and that was very emotional and very welcoming, so it was a wonderful evening. On February 20th and 27th, Edward Milne Community School did the exit interviews for the graduating students, and Councillor Parkinson and myself attended. And it was interesting to note that there were over 60 different careers that the students all wanted to be. And some didn't know, and that was totally fine too. But they presented what they wanted to do after graduation to us and several other community members. And so the careers ranged from architect to creative writer, librarian, engineer, property appraiser. So there's some traditional and more random careers, and it was really great to see. Let's see. February 28th, I had the housing committee meeting. We did decide to meet every third Thursday at 1 p.m., so the next one is coming up on March 21st here in council chambers. Everyone is welcome. We will be discussing a work plan that we'll review at the next meeting to determine what kind of low-hanging fruit we can capture right now and what we will be capturing after our housing assessment. Once that all comes together. On March 8th, I was at the Elder Connect Network event and at the Baptist Church. And it was an event hosted by our community in conjunction with the Elder Care Foundation and the BC Healthy Communities, who are putting together a beta test, and Sooke is the first one to be part of this test. So essentially, they're launching a website to connect seniors to local services. It's also helpful if you have a senior elder in another community that you want to assist and find services in their region, then ideally, once this all rolls out across the province and then potentially across the nation, you would be able to go to like Fort St. John and find the services that that person needs in that community. So it's all senior-specific services, which is fantastic. And our community will have a bunch of volunteer wayfinders that will help people navigate the system, learn how to use it. And they did they put up a screen and sort of tested the website with us, and it's all very simple, clean, easy to use, so it should be a really good service that our community is the perfect place to test for. And finally, on March 9th, I attended an event where we, at UVic, it was a movie and a panel that included Mayor Helps and David Suzuki, and it was interesting. It wasn't anything too new, no real new information about environmental impacts and changes, but it was interesting when Mayor Helps stated that it's not too late and there are things that we can do, and I know she was the lead on the CRD emergency action that went forward recently, and David Suzuki did say that, or did remind us all that while it may not be too late, it still is definitely an emergency, so it's good to see the CRD putting their foot forward on that, and thank you, Councillor St. Pierre, for just making that motion to get us all involved in that carbon footprint mapping as well. So that's all from me.
That's great. Thank you, Councillor Logans, and thanks for attending the Elder Connect. I had to go to the mainland, and it was last minute, so I appreciate you stepping in there. Thank you. Other members of council? Councillor Bateman?
Okay. I didn't prepare a report tonight on this, but I've quickly jotted down. So Councillor Beddoes and I were also at the EMCS grad class exit interviews, and that's fine. I just wanted to get our hands on, for Al in absentia, busy guy. I was at CD Saturday helping on the parking detail in our mud lot of a parking lot next door to the brewery, but that seems to have cleaned up now nicely. I guess staff perhaps went in and did some remediation in the lot, or the drier weather took care of that. They had 1,200 people there at CD Saturday on their 10th anniversary, and Food Chi people, congratulations to them once again. The Sooke Reconciliation Group, I attended just prior to those exit interviews, a session. Chief Planis spoke to the group, and this group has been meeting for the last year and a half, second Wednesday of the month. So they'll be meeting again this week, 2 days from now, at the Lazar building across from EMCS, and that's at noon to 2 o'clock, and everyone's welcome to attend that. Let's see. And then there was the Compassion Action Plan meeting. This is the Transition Sooke Working Group called the Sooke Multi-Belief Initiative, and Mayor Tate was there to welcome us, and along with Shirley Alphonse. And it's honed in on 5 priority issues, which I don't have in front of me here, but the report is now going to go through another iteration and be brought forward to council to receive for information, and hopefully to be appended to the next official community plan. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor St. Pierre?
Other than CD Saturday, which was an amazing event, most of my learning has been on 3 different platforms for having meetings online, which has been interesting. Not always successful, but interesting. One of them was for the Climate Leadership Caucus, which I invite you all to check out, and I can discuss that at your leisure. We're looking at ways of actually moving forward the climate emergency at the BCM and at the FCM, and how to actually get municipal leaders across Canada working on that sort of thing. So that's interesting in itself. We're also looking at a different meeting of the logical group in terms of the actual declaration of emergency and how to put some teeth into it. And so that'll be coming up further at the Intermunicipal Climate Action Task Force. upcoming, but discussions have begun.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor McMath, anything? Okay, just share some highlights because I know everyone, we want to get on here. Transit has had their workshop here in Sooke. A lot of the focus was on transit use within Sooke. I was unable to attend, but got the highlights there, and they'll be coming forward to council when they actually have a draft for our area completed. So it's about transit in and out of Sooke as well as transit in and around Sooke. Transit will be increasing property taxes by roughly $4 a household. That's average-based assessment for all of Greater Victoria. It's the first time that property taxes have increased, I think, in 3 years. It usually goes to provincial funding advocated for the fare box and then back to property taxes. Sea Park expansion continues to roll along. That's for the new fitness gym that's proposed for there. Councillor Bateman covered me in January when I was on an international mission that was sponsored by the FCM and UBCM. There's no cost to Sooke for the travel that I went on. I just want to make that clear. It was economy class that I flew in there and back, and essentially was a volunteer for the time I was there. Advocacy days for UBCM were held a few weeks ago in Victoria, so I met with 7 MLAs, I think. On the platform for all British Columbias, which is cannabis revenue, climate action, and housing. I've also been involved with a parity project with FCM, UBCM, and the Status of Women Canada. This is about attracting women to local government and how do you stay involved in local government. So Sooke has long had good representation on council, and especially now as well. So you'll see more of that roll out, and I would recommend when you have the opportunity to give feedback that you please do. It's very important. I'm off to Penticton tomorrow for FCM board meetings. This is full board, so it'll be all the committees. I'm on 4 different committees through FCM. LGLA, new council orientation, so our newly elected and I were up in Parksville along with our CAO. Thank you for driving us. Very informative. Had an opportunity to facilitate a session, co-facilitate with Mr. Schaefer. We got really good feedback on that, so I appreciate the time there. For the public, you all know there's a public open house on the budget scheduled for next Wednesday from 3 to 7 p.m. We've averaged maybe 1 person plus 1 media at each meeting so far. So we'd like to see if we can alter the date and the format to get some more feedback there. So we'll look forward to seeing you all there, of course. And then also strategic planning. Council is starting off our piece, providing a survey to our consultant. We will be looking for stakeholder engagement and a public online survey as well, with some sort of open house to follow. That will sort of kick off towards we started our part, but more end of March and into April. So that work will come. I was appointed also to an Access to Justice. This is year 3 of 3. It's to deal with funding that is not currently in place for families needing legal aid for family law or that. So you've seen some articles in the paper now, and they're looking at that. So it's my new thing. I don't know quite what to expect. Got a bit of an orientation, but more of that will come. Media highlights. Check news today about the bus queue jump. I sort of told them it's old news. This was announced over a year ago. Why are you announcing it now? But it's the construction on the jump at Jacqueline, so that the bus would actually be able to move past traffic. So the benefit to us, any of our computers will hopefully get home faster and safer, which will be great. And then I was on the Joe Perkins show on CFAX last week. They're doing all the mayors right now in the noon hour, so looking for a little lunch entertainment. You can go in. Apparently I did okay, so people called in, and it went by very fast. So I did criticize CFAX for not covering Sooke often enough, and hopefully maybe we'll see more about that. And then started a bit of a Choose Sooke hashtag on Twitter, because I was saying we have the best of everything here. We have the best whiff and spit, best parks, best staff. We were talking about gin, best gin in the world, best brew that's being brewed locally. And so this is so when you see my Choose Sooke hashtag, because No, choose, like choose Sooke. Not choose Sooke.
You were saying choose too.
I'm sorry for all those watching. It's choose Sooke. Choose Sooke. And it was because some people at CFAX had said that, oh, it's so far away, you know, we would live there. And I said, oh, you're missing out. We have the best of everything. Choose Sooke. Because we're that awesome. So yeah, so that's sort of this new thing I've started for my own amusement. Apparently, and those of some in the audience. Okay. So, moving on, notice of motion. We have one from Councillor Brenda Parkinson, and this here is that the section of bylaw number 600, zoning bylaw, Sooke zoning bylaw 2013 regarding legal non-conforming businesses be brought for discussion. Keyword is legal non-conforming there. So looking for a seconder. So that's moved by Councillor Parkinson. Gave motion, yeah. And seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. And discussion, Councillor Parkinson is the mover.
Through your worship, this is in regards to a number of properties that are along Sooke Road going out towards Shell Station out in that direction. And so we have a owner of a business that would like to build on the property to make the business more in line with Sooke. They hire a lot of Sooke residents. Anyhow, she'd like to make an addition to her property, and I think that it is a worthwhile cause, and I think that we have to look at doing things that make it easier and better for people who live in Sooke and want to improve their business for the people of Sooke.
Okay, so question here, in terms of this coming back for discussion, what would you like to see staff put on the agenda? Like obviously that particular section of the zoning bylaw,
Correct.
But anything else?
I guess we could have the definitions too, because it appears that, I'm not sure if we still have legal non-conforming or whether we changed it. So we have legal non-conforming where the people have had their business before incorporation, so they're legal, and then now they're non-conforming due to our bylaws. So I think that it's, and then we have non-legal, which shouldn't even play into factor right here. So I would just like for legal non-conforming and what we can do to make it easier for people to grow their business within Sooke.
Okay, does that help staff in terms of what to bring forward here for discussion at a later date?
Joni wants to add to it too.
Okay, just a second.
Through your worship, I'm not sure. Non-conforming and legal non-conforming are used interchangeably. They're the same thing. No, it just when the legislation uses the term non-conforming for something that conformed under a previous bylaw, and then later, so for example, like the Casinos Vet Clinic or other places there that were approved under the CRD bylaw, and then when we incorporated and developed our own district zoning bylaw, they no longer conform to our bylaw, but did conform previously. But the Local Government Act is what regulates additions to non-conforming uses. So unless we amend the Local Government Act as a local municipality, we don't have the authority to supersede that, at least not in my understanding.
Through your worship, just to get clarification on this, it's the Local Government Act that would stipulate that a legal non-conforming business may not expand without actually changing its zoning and applying for new zoning. Is that correct?
Yes, I actually have an excerpt from there, if that might help. It's from Part 14 of the Local Government Act, and it says that at the time a land use regulation bylaw is adopted, land or building or other structure to which that bylaw applies is lawfully used, and the use does not conform to the current bylaw. That's what non-conforming means. And we often say legal non-conforming. It's the same thing. Then the next section, so section 529, speaks to additions. So, 531. Subsection to this section, a structural alteration or addition must not be made in or to a building or other structure while a non-conforming use is continued in all or any part of it. it doesn't prohibit its continuous use, but if they want to alter the building and do an addition, they have to now conform to our zoning bylaw, which means a rezoning.
Okay, so because we don't have the context, I'd like the staff report to come back. So I'm support on the motion. So it's the case of what I'm looking from council is for you to give direction to staff on what we need to see back. I don't want to get into the weeds on this because I'm not following the conversation well. So, Councillor St. Pierre?
Okay, I think what we're looking for are some alternatives in terms of lowering the cost or keeping costs down for business owners that would like to expand their businesses in Sooke that are in a non-conforming situation, so that they're not actually stuck with the entire bill of changing the zoning when they were actually, perfectly legal, and they want to expand their business, take on new employees, and build our local economy.
One would argue that the fees haven't increased in so long that everyone is getting a deal right now, but we'll leave that. They haven't increased with CPI at all in 20 years, so I'm not sure. But we can have that come forward in terms of options for consideration. Councillor Parkinson?
I'm in agreement with that. We need to look at the fee structure for businesses. And I know that you say that legal non-conforming, but we do have properties that are totally non-conforming. So these people were legal when they were there. And so properties that came in and started doing things after incorporation are not legal. So to me, that's two different things. And I think that for someone who wants to improve their business and make it better for the people of Sooke, that we should be doing something to fix that. So that's what I'm looking for. And it's along of Councillor St. Pierre's recommendations. So that's what I'm looking for.
Okay, so we'll get some guidance there and just, need to know where the line is in terms of aiding business and what that looks like. So that's just information that would need to come in the staff report. Councillor Logans?
I'm also confused about how, the implications for legal non-conforming and historic non-conforming now that we've added that definition. So that's where I'm not really in favor of this motion. Perhaps adding that in the report would be helpful.
Yeah, so we need the report, and it's just what I'm trying to get is from this, what are we going to see? Because initially it would be like, is it just this page of the zoning bylaw and this, these pages? And we talk what is the, what other pieces to this? So that's what I'm looking for. So perhaps the mover and seconder, can also just talk to our staff and be like, okay, these are the questions I want to ask and have answered for this report. Okay? All right? Okay, call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor McMath is opposed? And Councillor Logans is opposed, so the motion carries. Okay? Okay, next notice of motion from Councillor McMath is that the District of Sooke contributes $7,500 to the Sooke Fast Pitch Committee. So that's been moved. I'm looking for a seconder. So I will... Councillor Bateman is seconding for discussion. So over to Councillor McMath, please.
As Justin basically took all my speech away earlier, but excuse me, Mr. Wilson, the Fast Pitch committee is looking for $7,500, and when this original request came through for the project, they were looking closer to a number of $50,000 to $60,000. So Mr. Wilson has put in an incredible amount of hours going back and forth with members of the community, with 4M Bobcat to lower that. He's also gone back and forth between the Director Hicks as well as the Sooke Community Association. There's a lot of groups here. So what has happened is that the Sooke Community Association has committed $15,000. The CRD has committed $2,500. Both of those are contingent on council committing $7,500. They've also put together the fundraiser that was sold out, extremely successful. I think it'll be an annual event, and that money raised will be a buffer for if the project goes over cost. This is a huge opportunity to have 3 different community groups working together for a project that benefits youth, adults as well. There's a women's fast pitch team. And I would delay it like we have for other requests. However, the timeline with completing this project, it needs to happen now. So that's why I brought the motion forward rather than wait and review. It is a fairly small amount for the entire cost of the project.
Okay, so in terms of delaying for the report where we get all the others, those you don't want to delay?
Correct.
Okay, so you'd like to see this?
I'd like to see the 75 come from the council contingency.
Okay, so that was my next question, was source, would be council contingency for source. And then the funds still would not be released, though, until the budget is actually adopted. So
why wouldn't we wait?
Because I'd like it committed.
Okay, so, but I think if the commitment was there, that would probably be enough to potentially satisfy the other parties then.
As long as the commitment's there, yeah, absolutely. So
well, the resolution would be that. So I think what you may want to do is just propose an amendment that after committee, just say from council contingency, so that the source is made aware, perhaps. I don't know. But that's up to you. Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship, I think that we should be staying in the same guidelines of what we have done for all of our groups that have come forward. And we've had 3 groups come forward this evening, and not that you're not that important, but every group is important. And I don't think that we should be making a motion to support one group over the others. I think that you should all be coming together.
Okay, Councillor Logans and Bateman.
I would be along the same lines as Councillor Parkinson in terms of postponing this until we do the 3rd reading. I know there's going to be a lot of information coming forward from the public during our public session with the budget, and there are a lot of other items on the table. I also would like to see what the report says in terms of the allocations that we may be giving out of our accounts already. So in this case, council contingency, what else are we planning to take out of that this year, and what are we at year to date? I do support this, but in principle, and I think it would be really important for us to get that full picture, which is why we asked for that report before we 100% commit. I also morally am not very pleased with the other groups who are part of this forcing us to be in this situation where it's like, oh, we're on a timeline and it's contingent on your funding. It's not really a great feeling to be put in the hot seat and saying, if we don't contribute this, the other groups just aren't going to. I don't really agree with that. Having said that, I understand it and certainly want this to go forward, but I do really need to see the implications of our grant process before moving this. So I would prefer to postpone this to 3rd reading.
Okay, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, it sounds, looking back at 2018 council contingency decisions, I see we gave $10,000 to the musical ride. I don't, was that on the night itself? The gentleman appeared and we approved 10,000.
It was a delegation from what I remember. Yeah.
Right. And we see $7,000 here to the Harmony Project, $5,000 for the RCMP statue, and other funding out of council contingency. So I guess the big question is, if we do hesitate, will this imperil your project? And there's a nod.
Sorry that we can't take any more public input at this point.
Sorry for asking.
I know, he was asking, the councillor was out of order.
Yeah.
Not the public.
As usual. And, so it's complicated. because looking at the earlier report filed by the Fastball Association, in which Mr. Wilson did lay out the amount of groundwork that has been done, the cost shaving, so many contributors. So it would be a shame if we imperiled that, and yet I quite understand as well that we need to play things evenly.
Okay, Councillor St. Pierre, then to McMath.
I tend to agree with the need to treat everyone the same. At the same time, there's an in-kind contribution that's significant. There's the money coming from the CRD, there's the money coming from the Sooke Community Association, but there's also an in-kind contribution that sounds to be on the order of $20,000 to $30,000 that we also should be considering in all this. It's an investment of $7,500 on something that I think most of the people at this table would agree on. I'm just putting that forward. I have a problem with actually treating one group differently from the others, but we may actually be in a different situation. That's for everyone to decide for themselves.
Councillor McMath?
Just on the note of treating groups differently, I think there should be a line item for sports groups. There's currently line items for arts groups, and right now, aside from the turf field donation, they're receiving triple what money has been given to sports. So it's not the motion that I'm making now. It's not about favoritism. It's about timing, and it's essential, and it's something that there's no debate of what it gives to the community. For the youth, for the adults, the mental, the physical health, the stats on people that play sports, how they continue on to post-secondary education, it's a clear benefit. There's no denying it. It's a very small amount, and I would really like to see it go forward tonight.
Councillor Logans.
While there isn't a line item for sports groups, the community contributes to Sea Park. We are doing the $1.22 million playing field, and the line items are registered nonprofits. So I don't know of I could be wrong, but I don't know of any sports groups other than Sea Park that would be registered nonprofits. Not that that's a requirement, but. Yeah.
Okay.
The trick with this field and the other fields as well, as Sooke is in an awkward growing stage. Other municipalities typically own their sports fields, so Parks takes care of them. Parks does maintenance. Sooke is stuck having to have a president of the Fast Pitch League coordinate renovations and restorations and things that shouldn't be their responsibility. And the fields themselves are owned by the Sooke Community Association. So you're in this odd sort of fractured group of who takes what. And this is a huge opportunity for the district to put a small amount forward to work collectively as a group to support the community, and rather than sort of get caught up in process because this amount is so insignificant. That's why I'm pushing, as well as the timing for the fast pitch season coming through. If it doesn't go through soon enough, then that will delay the restoration process, so then it won't be completed at least for another year. Not to mention, if we miss this opportunity, then those offers of the $15,000 from the Community Association plus the $2,500 from the CRD, those will be lost, and those will not be guaranteed for next year.
Okay. So I seem to recall that Mr. Wilson had come initially to us as a delegation, and then we had suggested that he apply for community grants. Is that correct? And then it was like, okay, we want to send you to our community grant program. So it started though as a delegation, and then in chambers, and then the second time was community grant application. Correct? Yeah. Right? Okay. So. And I really appreciate this dialogue, because I know that we do have other groups that are waiting. I agree. I don't like to be pushed into a corner like fund this or we won't fund you, but I'm not getting that message from either Director Hicks or the Community Association. So it just could be how it's being translated now to us. It was much different than our earlier delegation tonight. So in this case, because I've been made aware of this field through that very first delegation, and it was the case of, okay, we know that we need to work on doing something here. What does that look like? And then it's the case of this process. But of course, our grants, I didn't realize that so much had already been committed out of the program. So then that left what we had available not to the fulsome amount that initially it was. I know that it was well explained in the report. I just didn't see it because of the other commitments that came out of it. I don't want to get into a dialogue over funding one particular over another, because I think Sooke is wonderful that it has all these opportunities, and some do well in sports, some do well in art and music, and it's wonderful that we support all of these different things. There should be a variety. To me, everyone should play a sport, everyone should play an instrument, everyone should sing a song from time to time or garden and do all these things, and that's what makes our community so wonderful. I'm comfortable supporting it. And it's because of the number of times we've received information on this. So I know that it does seem it's unfair to some of the others that are emerging, but we're going to get to that, and we'll deal with that in the report. But it's just given that there is a time stretch, and the applicant or the representatives have been waiting patiently and have approached us on a number of occasions for this. So I'm comfortable making that, but it still cannot be paid out until the budget's adopted. So I can't be writing a check in this particular run because we still have to go through a process there. So I'll support the motion. Anything further? And the only, so it's coming from council contingency. I think we've all heard that, and we all know that. Okay? So I will call the, anything further? False piece? Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Councillor Parkinson is opposed. The motion carries. Okay, so stay tuned for that. I don't believe there's any report of any in camera. There is? There's one. Okay, can we have that on the screen, please? Okay, so we have a Horizon report here that Council award the contract to facilitate the development of the 2019 to 22 strategic plan to Barefoot Planning Limited in the amount of $21,690 plus GST, and that the item be brought forward for discussion during the 2019 to 23 financial plan budget process. So this has been moved and seconded as just a Horizon report. So it's here for information. Motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. 20 to 10.